Sean, you have some interest in, I guess, the notion of organized atheism. Yeah? What's on your mind?
How are you all?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right. What can we do for you today?
So I was actually off two things. I had the thing just said, and also, so I was in the tent with Josh, and I also saw the green light. I wanted to know what to say.
You're cutting out a little bit there.
Yeah, I didn't hear the last thing you said.
I was in the tent with Josh as well, and I also saw the green light.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. What of it? How much of our conversation did you hear? What do you have to tell us?
I'm just kidding. I was just wondering this is, and what the Austin Atheist Community is all about. Is that the right thing?
Yeah, well, the Atheist Community of Austin is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. At least that's how I like to describe the talking points. Tell me about your question.
I guess that really is my question. Is like, so what? Like, how long have y'all existed? What do y'all like? As far as nonprofit work, because I used to live somewhat close to Austin. I don't know. I'm just curious.
Oh yeah. So I like to think that I notice like your question here on our screen is about community. I like to think that the ACA is just an example of a larger organization that replicates the community that you can also find in smaller batches. So for example, I don't live in Austin, I actually live in Phoenix, but the idea that there is community for people out there like us who don't believe in God, or we consider ourselves atheist or agnostic, or people who consider themselves humanist, or maybe they're not sure, we provide basically a place for them to go to listen to conversations that we have that they might not be able to have themselves. So for example, a lot of people, and maybe you've experienced this, maybe you haven't, a lot of people lose their family members or their community or their connections, or they even risk losing their job by asking these questions about the existence of God or the truth behind the Bible, or whether or not religion and history and research go hand in hand. And so I think one of the most important things about organizations like ours, like the ACA, is we provide that platform. We provide those conversations. Those people who maybe are too afraid or risk too much in having those conversations are welcome to come listen to us, be asked questions, answer questions, ask questions ourselves, have these conversations, make points, interview people who are professionals in their field, whether they are professionals in the field of history or science or theology. And we basically just provide a community, the same sense that churches often provide for Christians. We provide a community for people who, for whatever reason, are seeking answers to the same questions that we are.
Okay, so this could be like especially beneficial for someone that grows up in, say, a town with maybe 5,000 people, but 5 churches.
Exactly.
In a 10-mile proximity.
Exactly.
Not a lot of outlets.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of the work that we do is providing community for folks who feel isolated in that way, while also helping people to grapple with their experiences. You know, we live in a culture and in a global community where religion is thoroughly normalized, and many of the harms of religion are glossed over. And so having an opportunity to create community, but also create conversation around what it is like, for instance, to grow up in fear of the rapture or in fear of hell, to be shamed for your identity or your sexuality or your skepticism or your non-compliance with a set of morality that is not functional or useful in your life. Like, there's a lot of meaning to those types of conversations for people coming from all different kinds of backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then as far as like, because I would assume that for most people on the side would say that the idea of actively trying to separate religion from, like you said, government or any actual like bodies of power, so like a school system, could negatively impact people if it's like strongly embedded with like a church mindset or a religious mindset. Like, what is you think in America the most realistic way to separate what would be like from a government standpoint or from the bodies of power? How do you separate church?
Yeah. So, Sean, we're having a very difficult time understanding you with a pretty weak connection. I will say that separation of church and state is an important part of our mission, and we do that through donations to a number of different organizations. We do that through having meaningful conversations and promoting the idea. On an individual level, we do that in the way that we vote, in the way that we engage with politics, the way that we shape the conversation around who is in power and who ought to be in power. It's definitely a challenging question to answer because it is such a broad issue. But separation of church and state is fundamental to our mission, and we attack it primarily through our education aspects, like programs like this, where we discuss issues and recognize the way that religion being encroached upon by religion encroaching on government causes harm to society.
And I think we also provide a place where people can come and say, just because members of leadership believe these things doesn't mean that we have to believe these things, or just because members of leadership, whether it be at a state, national level, whether it be a smaller level like your community, just because they say the 10 Commandments belong in schools, right? Doesn't mean that we have to say, yeah, the 10 Commandments belong in schools. We provide a place where people can learn that there are more of us out here that say, no, they don't belong in schools, or no, that isn't actual literature, or no, the Bible isn't a publication that should be studied by children as more than a historical document of like fiction, like Aesop's fables, how they are arguably important, but not because they're true. So I think the most important thing that we do is we help people recognize that they're not the only ones having these thoughts, and they don't have to agree with members of leadership who say these things, and they don't have to agree with people around them who all think the same thing. Because it turns out there's a lot more people who agree with the questions that we provide than the actual things they're being told by their church or in their community or by their leadership or by their politicians. They're just afraid to speak out because they think they're the only outlier in their community, when in reality there are millions of us out here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thanks.
You can certainly find
for
out
asking.
more about our organization at atheist-community.org. Check out some of the content that we've put forward. But I appreciate your curiosity, and I hope that you will, on whatever level is appropriate to you, join our community of atheists.
Yeah, and I mean, if I could ask one more question, I just wonder, what do you think? And this is broad. What do you think is the biggest offense that, like, for instance, Christianity does, or like keeps it Texas? Like, anything personal, you could say like abortion is weird in Texas, or anything broadly speaking in America.
Yeah, I mean, again, Sean, you're kind of breaking up there a little bit.
I think he asked what the biggest, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think he asked what the biggest offense is that Christianity in, say, law and government and places of power commit on the American people. Is that correct, Sean?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got an answer, but Chrissy, you're
Please.
welcome to
Yeah, I guess I'll just say quickly that as a gender and sexuality therapist, I have to say that for me, no wrong answers here, but for me, it has to do with the way that religion is prescriptive about our sexuality, that it tries to tell us that sex is for one specific thing or maybe two specific things, that it is only honoring to God, that it is only right or just when it exists in a monogamous cishet relationship, when it has been blessed by God, when it is in the service of procreation or creating intimacy. All of those things are fine and great and wonderful, but there are so many forms of healthy, happy sexuality that don't look like that. And by creating a worldview in the way that we teach our children in schools, the mores and the way that we enforce them in our culture through TV and through mass media, like there's so many aspects of the way that we demonize healthy, normal sexuality that causes incredible trauma. I think that we are universally impacted by it, but it's also going to be incredibly differential if your own natural sexuality doesn't line up with what's being prescribed to you by religion and government.
And I would say on a broader scale, I would say the biggest harm is shame. There is a direct link where religion shames people for physiological actions their body has done without their consent. So, for example, you are shamed for having sexual urges before marriage. You're shamed for having an ectopic pregnancy that cannot survive as a viable pregnancy. You're shamed for having questions and having doubts that arguably, in my opinion, aren't a choice at all. It's just your brain operating the way that your brain was made to operate. And so I think the biggest harm that religion and places of power puts on people is the idea that they should be ashamed of things that happen to them and thoughts that they have and biological urges that they have that are of no control of their own. And they should be ashamed of being interested in exploring those biological urges that they did not choose to have. And there are so many biological urges we can talk about, mental illnesses, things like that, that are of no control to the person that they are happening to. But religion says you should be ashamed. You should stop. You should keep yourself from acknowledging those. You should keep yourself from acting on those things, when in reality, it's just your body being the human body that you were given when you were born.
Okay. Okay. That's awesome. Do I need to go, or do I still have time?
Well, Sean, I do appreciate you calling in. If you would love to hear more, I'd love for you to call in on a slightly stronger connection and to check out our website, which is, again, atheist-community.org. But I appreciate your curiosity, and I hope that this community has something to offer you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Take good care.